tail's down, the Bombay is kind of perspective-wise seems shorter because it's at an angle, but when it's actually horizontal it does seem a lot bigger. 33 feet, which is apparently big enough for a bus. We haven't tried it. The bomb doors are down on the floor here, on the platform here. They've all got to be paint stripped. The paint strippers are coming back to us in January, all being well January, to start paint stripping some of the components here as well. Bomb doors, they just seem a lot bigger when they're off the aircraft than when they're on the aircraft. We've got wing tips down here as well. Wing tips, undersides of them have found quite a lot of corrosion on them for whatever reason. So that's all got to be addressed and sorted. Also, on the wingtip, the leading edge steel, which was there to break against barrage balloon cables, to stop the wingtip from being forced off by them. What you get when you put steel next to aluminium is you get this similar corrosion. The two metals don't like each other and it actually forms corrosion. So we've got a bit of corrosion where the leading edge meets the aluminium. We've also found in the wingtips that over its age while it's been flying or static on the gate, if any of the solid rivets have just popped and blown, it's been replaced with a pop rivet. Now we've got to take out all those pop rivets that were replacement and put them back to solid rivets. There's quite a lot of work to do on the wingtips to replace the rivets back to how they should be. You find on things like the wingtip, through the very process of actually producing them, on the top side is a solid rivet, on the underside is a pop rivet, because you're creating a sealed unit and you can't get to the opposite side to actually do a solid rivet. We're still paint stripping a few components on the aircraft, a few little bits that weren't done during the actual paint strip. So things like the trailing aerial housing, the heater housing on the other bench there. So please don't touch those units because they may still have a bit of paint stripper left on them. The turrets on the aircraft sit in basically a mild steel ring. We've found on those mild steel rings there's quite a bit of corrosion on them, a bit of rust, just being left out in the elements. Also on the nose turret ring, because the aircraft sits at an angle, you tend to get water that pools at the back of that ring. So that's got worse corrosion at the back of the ring than it has on any part of it. The aircraft's designed that when you fly with the airflow, it actually sucks the water out that sits at the back of the ring. We haven't done much flying recently, and so it hasn't actually pulled that moisture out, that water out, and taken it away from the turret ring. Okay, so tailplane, not a lot of corrosion really on that at all. Undersides of the aircraft are always seem to be slightly worse corrosion than the top sides due to it being stood over grass and the moisture dropping and falling and never really dries out. One of the things we've got to do, the elevator, it won't be done this winter but it will be done in the coming years. The elevator has a tube that runs through it which is kind of the spar for the elevator, and that's a steel tube, so it's got corrosion on the inside as you get over the years, so that's got to be replaced. So the elevator's got to be completely taken apart, the tube replaced and then riveted back together. All the engine cowlings, we know there's quite a lot of work to do to those just through general wear and tear. There's these fasteners that hold the cowling to the framework around the engine. They come in and out all the time as you take the engines out and you do work on the engine. So they've begun to wear the hull, so you get wear around all the parts that you normally use. So they've got to be completely stripped back and repaired. A lot we've done this winter due to time constraints really, so for repaint they'll just be buffed back and then repainted over the top. We've currently got top cowlings on order for reproduction, so they'll be done over this winter period, ready for fitting possibly next winter. There's various things like the turrets, we're not touching those this winter, they'll go back on, they'll be buffed back, repainted and just go back on as they are. That'll be a separate winter job. They're not parts that have to be officially airworthy, shall we say. As long as how they're fixed onto the aircraft is deemed airworthy, then they should be okay. Okay, if we make our way around the port side of the aircraft a bit further. Lancaster flew with the French Naval Air Force in the 1950s and 60s. There were a few modifications actually done to the aircraft to bring it to the Western Union specification that's required for the French work. One of those was to put an observation window in the port side of the aircraft just forward of the tailplane. What's happened there is they've basically cut a hole in the original skin of the aircraft, reinforced around those holes with some extra stringers and formers to keep the strength of the fuselage, and then they've put another a second skin of aluminium over the top. So what you can see that's peeled off there, we've been taking it off just this last week, is the strengthening skin of aluminium that's been put over the top. We've been in two minds just recently about what to actually do to repair this. Obviously the window is part of this particular aircraft's history, but also we are putting it back to a Bomber Command specification. One of the things we have, of course, because the aircraft is beginning to be governed by the CAA, every modification and everything you do has got to have paperwork with it to justify and explain what's happening and why it's happening and why it is still strong enough to operate. One of the problems we have is when the aircraft was prepared for the gate at RAF Scampton, the window was taken out and there was just a patch put over the top. So we don't currently have the original window frame and the window for it, so we can't put it back to the specification modification that it was when the French used it, and the stringers and formers aren't there to put it back to the original Bomber Command specification either. So what we've got to do at the moment is leave the strengthening formers and everything the French put in, or the Avro put in for the French, and put a new piece of aluminium over the top where the windows have been cut out. So to all intents and purposes, from the outside you wouldn't know there was any patch there. From the inside you'll still see where the windows were, so it kind of marries both sides of the aircraft's history. Underneath the wings here you'll see the corrosion on this side as well, as I was talking about on the starboard side, just behind the engines. There's a little bit corresponding on the top as well, we suspect that's probably due to exhaust gases as well. They have a lot of contaminants in them, carbon and all sorts of things which will affect the aluminium on the aircraft. So we think it's a mixture of that and the something to do with the black paint that was used during its French service. Can't really see why it would just be located in those areas otherwise. When you see outboard of the outboard engine, it's perfect. There's not really any problems at all. It's just when you get behind the engine. Straight above my head here, there's some more kind of fillet panels, the access panels to take the trailing edge off. They're all held on by pop rivets at the moment, which is as per the Avro drawing. We're going to replace those with 2V8 screws as per the fillet panels and the fuel tank panels. That will just mean that every time we want to take the trailing edge off, we're not having to drill out rivets every time and therefore possibly damaging holes. We can just unscrew the screws. We've had a few problems taking off the number one fuel tank panel due to corrosion. The panel is actually held underneath the undercarriage valance, so the undercarriage door holds it on, so you've got to take those off and then get to the screws. So we found the screws that were underneath the undercarriage valance aren't really too bad, they're okay. The other ones suffer from corrosion, so a lot have had to be drilled out and beaten out and things. We've also found, which we didn't know about, the rear screws that hold the panel up are actually drilled into the spar and the spar's tapped. So any screws that have had to be drilled out or the head's drilled off, it's going to cause us a little bit of an issue with how we then repair the hole in the main spar. There is a Shackleton repair scheme which we can use to do it, which basically is retapping the hole to take a new screw. So it shouldn't be too much of a problem, but it again highlights the issues with having the paperwork there to back up the repair that you do. That's why any repairs and anything to aircraft seems to take an awful lot longer than they would to your car, because you've got to be responsible for everything that you do and just show the paperwork to back it up and all the stress calculations to prove that it is strong enough repair to do. Yeah, NDT work that we've done so far has proved they're okay. We have a little bit more to do. Something we're doing possibly next week is NDT on the holes where the spars join together. So underneath the fillet panel here, the outer spar meets the inner spar and it's held together by a shackle plate. That shackle plate's got to be removed and the holes have got to be any current tested, so NDT to check to make sure there's no corrosion or cracking around the hole. Hopefully that'll come back okay. The problem we've got there, of course, is the shackle plates are steel and the aluminium, the main spar is an aluminium alloy, so there might be some dissimilar corrosion between the two there as well, which has to be checked out. One of the things we've found has probably saved the condition of this aircraft quite a lot is the fact that in the undercarriage bay we have a skin that's been put in to stop any moisture or air getting within the wing itself. The EVMF Lancaster doesn't have that skin for whatever reason. Whether it was a tropicalised modification for a Mark 7 Lancaster when it went out towards Japan, possibly so, or whether the French put it in when it was flying in the 50s doing maritime reconnaissance to keep the salt air out. That's also a possibility. Well, that really has protected the insides of the wings to stop any corrosion much starting in there, so we're very grateful for that. Another thing we've got to be very grateful for is the RAF, while they protected the aircraft while it was at gate guard at RAF Scampton. A lot of people think the aircraft was just left out on the gate at Scampton and left to sit there and corrode. But they did actually look after it very well. They did a lot of preparation work before the aircraft was put on the gate, and they also sprayed in a fluid which we refer to as ox blood. So it's kind of a reddish brown fluid which you can see on the subframe and the other side of the wing there. And that's a preservative fluid which has been coated in as many places as possible. There's some places it's been put that you would think, why have they put it there? And there's some obvious places that they haven't put it. But that's the throw of the dice, I guess. But yeah, that has protected a lot of areas on the aircraft. The engines were completely covered with it when we got it here in '88. So it's done a lot of protection for us. And you could probably say that that period in its life saved the Lancaster to be in as good a condition as it is now. So as a whole, as an overview, it is in a similar condition to what we expected it to be. We haven't found any major problems which are a showstopper, shall we say, for getting her airworthy. It's just now a case of producing all the paperwork and the list of everything that has to be done and then striking those off as we go through the aircraft. Next week we should be doing quite a lot of work in the number 1 fuel tank bays, and then we'll be starting on skin work once the final survey's been done and listing down everything that we have to do. Okay, any questions? That means I've talked too long and told you too much. Okay, so you're welcome to have a good look around the outside of the aircraft, take as many photos as you want. You can also have a walk up the gantry there and take a photograph over the top of the wings if you would like to. But we need to limit that to 2 people at a time. Okay, thank you very much for joining us. Hope you've had a good day. This here is maybe
stopping ready